In this video you can watch some parts of this full of interesting information webinar. If you want to attend live the Football Coach 365 webinars, and have access to a huge database of coaching material, training drills and coaching theory, subscribe to our channel and our newsletter on the link in the description.
Through 11 aside. So what I want to do is connect first my training methodology and how that incorporates positional play. So the first thing that I do is I have small, medium, and large area possession and positional. I call them environments, right? So possession is different than positional exercises. So possession is something that I would call self-organizing, where we don't tell the players where to be. They self-organize and find the spaces that they should be in order to circulate the ball. In positional exercises, we assign spaces to the players, and that keeps it more structured. But the game of soccer is often it's very random. I mean, there's limits to the randomness because there's rules. You can't use your hands, there's out of bounds and so forth. So there's limits to how chaotic it can become, but players still have to self-organize even in a positional play type of style. And the using of the constraint-led approach is something that I do in my own training method. I use a color-coded system where the blue day does not have to have anything to do with the game model in a sense. It's a lot of complexity. It could be in small areas. It could be scoring on end zones. It could be scoring on 5 different goals, all kinds of constraints. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to relate to the game model itself. Now, there's going to be bits and pieces to it that will, but my point with this is that they're learning to keep the ball in a constrained environment in small areas, medium areas, and large areas. It creates adaptable players who can adapt to any situation, and that's very important. The red days are game model specific. It's the real distances, it's the real field, it's how we train for the match that's coming up on Saturday. Fitness, I try not to separate from these. I try to incorporate it in what we're doing, and the day before the game is a game review. I don't time. This is important. So when I do show you all, what I do, it's important to understand that I work in the moment. So these are my environments. I will sketch out different environments. I don't time them in training. So when I come to training, I want players making meaningful decisions from the first second they step on the field. The difference is the workload will be lower. So maybe it's a 4v1+1 transitional rondo in 6 yards by 6 yard space. All they have to move is 1.5 feet in either direction. They make meaningful decisions. It's one touch. Then maybe after 3 minutes, they do a tiny bit of physical, 30 seconds, back into that. Everything is about decision making on the ball from the first second of practice on. And it's just like the ecological dynamics that players are in a constant feedback loop with the environment, and they make decisions in real time. It's not based upon past memories. For me, I would never time 15 minutes of this exercise. I go with what's needed and how I need to change it in that exact moment. That's my YouTube channel. I have all my training sessions there. I have probably over 1,000 training sessions on that YouTube channel. Now, I wanted to give you a quick video of what I progressed to my positional play model this past spring. If you notice, we don't have wing backs, even though I labeled them. They're wingers. These are wingers out wide here. You have 2 center backs, and you have a striker. The rest is a 5-man midfield, 2 6s, 2 10s, and 1 8. There's a lot of freedom involved here, a lot. So if you just take a look, I'm going to play this for you. So we're in blue, and we're playing. This game is against the University of Connecticut, which is in the Big East Conference. They have players drafted from them every year. It's one of the best teams in the country. And you could see, again, we're in blue. We have a 5-man midfield with only 2 at the back in this system. You just notice how comfortable the guys are in small spaces. If we draw them all in, the other side of the field is often open. This clip is just a few minutes. I think it's important to see, even in the upcoming clips. This is a lot of freedom of movement here. This is a box center mid. It's very close to Brighton, and obviously then we can change it into a 5-person center mid. The box center mid we actually play right now. That's tilting. So watch this. This is against St. John's University, a top Division I NCAA Division I team. They try to press us with 6. Notice we have a 5-man center mid, but notice the freedom we give. The goalkeeper is very, very important in this. Your goalkeeper in all positional play is your one. And the level of the guys, I mean, listen, the guys are a very good level. You could probably tell in this that you're dealing with players from all over the world. That goalkeeper was at Barcelona. One of the center mids was at Benfica. This is a very, very good level of these players here. And you could see in college soccer, they usually don't use the midfield. It's usually all physical and fast and trying to high press you. And our goalkeeper controls the game. And at this point, they can't really high press us. It's too much for them. Otherwise, they're going to just chase all day long. And this is continued on. This is, again, 5-man center mid with only 2 in the back. And you'll see that some of the midfielders, especially the 10s, can make their runs into wide areas as well. But the guys are very, very comfortable on the ball. It's a midfielder from Japan who's technically, some of the Japanese players for us have been really, really incredible players. It's another right back from Japan. And the 34s from Portugal played at a very good level in Portugal. And this is a team of ours that won the national championship in, I think it was 2022. And you could just see we're very comfortable. You could see the positioning here. We're very comfortable on the ball. Big switch here. Isolate that 1v1. We have to get good at breaking down low blocks because almost every team will try to sit on us in a low block. So this goes into just a little bit, this is the constraint stuff where we have zones where they can't press. So this is typical training session type of stuff for us, right? All these different, I would consider this a medium area environment, but you can see everything is about keeping the ball. This is actually our game model. This is split into different grids here using the garden hoses, because if you pass over the garden hose, the ball pops up in the air, makes it a little bit more difficult. But the 210s are in red, so we always know where the 210s are, and they're free. They are free to overload. They are free to run forward, obviously get into the box. And I'll just let this one last one, and then we'll go through the whole positional play stuff. So for me, this whole thing, the whole game of soccer, when I speak about it, this is all about exploiting time and space when you have the ball and shutting down time and space when you don't have the ball. So when you have it, exploit time and space to score goals. When you don't have it, shut down time and space so you can win the ball back and stop the other team from scoring. It's really quite simple. I will show you a little video. I'm gonna stop that. I will show you a little video. This here was the other day in training. So these two blue areas are marked off by cones. So now when I told you about Brighton, so our positional play model, because of the players we have right now, is taking our number 10. Well, our number 10 is going to sit in this blue area here. Our striker is going to come into this other blue area here. It's probably like an 8-yard area where they're free. No defender can go in there until the ball is played into that area. And our goal is, can we work with a double pivot and get this ball into the back foot of a number 10 who can then get the spaces on the diags to stay high. So this is a very short clip. So it's from practice again yesterday. So notice, I would like my 2 6s to stay closer together. In the beginning of practice, they weren't quite as close together. But our goal ultimately is to get in and behind, right? And this is what I would call kind of a phase of play training session. I intentionally made this on a smaller field. Best on a bigger field with full width and full length, but this one is probably 75 in length and 50 in width. So it's a little harder. And you could see the other constraint in this was the back line had to stay at half field of the black team until the ball crossed. So positional play in general is about creating superiorities while you're in possession of the ball. Couple different ways to do that: skill, speed, positioning, and numbers. So when we look at it, zone 1 is your build-up zone, right? That's going to always, if you want to use a double 6, great. It gives you an extra player. I love to use a double 6, just like the Zerbi does. Really, really good. The keeper is always your +1. Next zone, zone 2, your progression zone. There's always a lot of numbers in that zone. It's always compact. If we can have a +1 and then look to switch to the attack, great. Attacking third is zone 3, and obviously against a team with a low block. If you could have even numbers, great, but most times you're not. But that's zone 3. Some of the general ideas in positional play is play your 50 possession. And Guardiola spoke about this the other day. I was listening to Kyle Walker speak about receiving the ball in the half turn is great, but in the build-up phase, it's not as safe. So if you play the way you're facing and then they look for that space, it's a safer option for keeping the ball. Everybody in a positional play model is really always adjusting their positions slightly to make passing angles for where the ball is, right? Adjusting your body position to fit so you can keep the ball, making triangles all over the field. Now, we can either attack space, or you hear the term la plaza of keeping the ball, keeping it, and forcing them to come to you, which creates space in and behind. Now, the principles of play for coaches, we can talk about principles of play. For me, I actually am not a big principle of play person, because I don't think that players operate off of principles of play. Players only need to know how to exploit space and time and how to shut it down. They don't need to actually know the principles. When Giovinco played for Toronto FC, he spoke no English, and he was the best player, the most influential player. He was amazing in the MLS. He didn't speak English. At that time, Toronto FC had 16 attacking principles of play. Guarantee he knew 0. But what he did know was he was attuned to the right information in that current feedback loop and he knew how to exploit space and time to score goals. So positioning, right? In positional play, we want to position in between lines. And what does that mean? That means simply in between the midfield line and the back line, in between their front two and the midfield line. You want to play in between lines. Next, in between players is a big one, right? Because if we play in between players, especially like the center backs, the right back, the left back, you don't want to allow those defenders to be able to see you and the ball at the same time. Make it hard on them. Pull off in between players. And, like Cruyff said, if you can get in between players on that back line, you're going to be faster. If you're fast, but if you start 3, 4, 5 yards in from that back line, now they're faster than you because you started 5 yards back. Body orientation with positioning is huge. And like I said, you're always in a constant state of repositioning, creating triangles of support all over the field. And you could see here, obviously, you could see that the 2 10s are positioned in between lines. There would be a good time to receive the ball on the back foot. And you could see how these players in the front 3 are positioned in between players. It's just a quick example. Individual matchups, right? Skill sets is massive. For me, if you're a very skilled winger and you're up against a defender who's a lesser defender, maybe has less pace, like right when you see Zinchenko for Arsenal and he's paired up against a real fast winger, he's in trouble. And that's a superiority, and you have to exploit those. Peter Cech in the box, a 6'4" guy, marked up against a 5'11" guy, it's a superiority of height. So these things are things that you have to look at. Speed, speed matchups, the timing of the runs, when to exploit the third man running. These are big things. And with the third man running, if he's running at speed and the defender is stationary, you have a massive speed advantage. So this whole thing we're talking about is a search for superiorities. So numbers, having the +1 with the goalkeeper, having the +1 in the midfield, it allows you to keep the ball. It allows you to attract players to you and then hit them on the other side. So again, possession versus positional. I do both. I always train both because both skill sets are massively important. So now I'm going to take you through kind of how would you do this in youth soccer. I coached my son's team for the last 2 years, 7v7, and now he just moved up to 9v9. So the very basic ideas. I'll call this positional, you could call it possession, but say that the guy in yellow is going to is always on the team with the ball, the red guy's the defender. These 2 players, in order to keep it 2v1, are constantly repositioning themselves in angles of support. Build that up, it's 3v2. This is positional / possession in a box, right? Very, very simple. Now we start to look at some game model stuff. So we'll say here, this is 3 in the back, 2 center mids, and a striker, right? And when in the defensive shape, it's a line of 3 and a line of 3. If you look at the first exercise on the right, very simple. You have your center back, left back, right back, and center mid. This is a 4v1 rondo, 7v7 game model. The kids could be 8, 9 years old. Now we add another player in the middle. So now you actually have 2 center mids. You have your center back, left back, right back. So now this is a 5v1. Let's progress from there. Now we add another defender. This is actually a full transitional rondo game model. 2 center mids, left back, right back, center back, and a striker. Let's say after 3 passes, they can transition the ball to the striker. Both outside backs will transition down. One of the center mids will go into the middle, and the other one will come to the half line as both defenders chase. That's a 5v2 transitional rondo, which is position specific. Next, you take away that middle line And now you have added defender. Now you have a real game model here where you play in, you attract the defenders, and then you hit them on the far side where the space is. And it's an ongoing game. It's positional, it's everything. Now we progress this to a real game with scoring on small sided goals. And you have the red team, the left back and right back and center back, is always on the team with the ball. So in this case, you can see that you have two center mids in blue, a striker in blue, the center back, right back, left back. The left back and right back can't invert. They have to stay outside. They play until they score. If yellow wins the ball, they must play to an outside back before they can score. And the new center back for yellow will step on the field, and the center back for blue will step off the field. But let's think about this in terms of academic theory. Is the information real? Yes, it's real. They're exploiting time and space. It's the most important thing in this game. And the environment is real. Or they're going to have to change intentions. They're going to have to adapt technique. It's going to affect their perception. It's all real. Now, if we want to take this a step further, we'll call this a positional constraint-based game, where you have your formation 6 against 4 with a goalkeeper now. The center backs, center mids, and forward have to stay in that larger middle lane as the outside backs stay in the outside lane. The constraints of the lanes have now built attacking organization for you. The coach doesn't have to yell to kids, hey, get wide, get wide. The constraints of the game have built attacking organization without the coach having to say a word. Now, you can also roll the ball out from the side as the players run onto the field for each possession. And it's nice because now they're getting into attacking organization. This one, same game, but now it's 6v6, well, 7v7. But this red line down the middle, we're starting to show them how do you zonally defend, right? So only one player on the yellow team could cross the line at a time. So if this guy crosses and they switch the ball out wide, he will tuck back in as the out wide yellow player will step over the red line. It's teaching defensive compactness at the same time zonal defending. And all the time it's teaching them in an environment where the coach doesn't have to say anything because they created a really smart environment. Now, when we talk about positional stuff, it's kind of a big discussion here because a lot of coaches, including the U.S. Soccer Federation and all these things, they don't like rondos. And for me, these are very, very important parts of training. 360-degree scanning. Guardiola's positional rondo here. For the two center mids in the middle, come on, they have to find their own space. They shouldn't be running over other players' passing lanes. They have to have 360-degree scanning. This is an amazing exercise where you're learning to find and exploit the space and time that's available. So does it have to have a direction? In my opinion, no. Does it need scoring? No. Can you still find huge amounts of value? Absolutely. But it can't be the only environment you play in. It's one of the many environments you create for your players that are beneficial. This is a very simple environment. I actually created this for my younger kids, my 9-year-olds, where they run onto the field, 3 defenders. I have the other blue team already spaced out, marked out in zones that they have to stay in, and they can only play 2-touch using the yellow player if they want to keep the ball, and that's it. They just move the ball, and they can adjust their positioning 5 yards in either direction, and that's it. It's just an exercise, but it gives them an idea of not running all over the place like a possession exercise. So again, direction scoring, we just talked about that. These are exercises like third man running type of stuff. So in the first one up top here, you can't hit a through ball until you're in that zone with the red players, which is shaded gray. It really attunes, it really changes a player's perception. So they're looking for that combination play and for somebody to run through and to finish on goal. Our warm up is actually below. This is a warm up we would do, say 4v4 plus 2 with 2 5-yard end zones. But this main playing area is very small. Maybe that's a 12 by 12 area, right? So there's not a lot of running involved in this. It's just keeping the ball one touch, one touch, one touch, trying to find a man running into the end zone. And obviously the top one is game model. This is the same thing, but I made the spaces so small. You're looking to hit third man running balls within a 5-yard little space here. Yes, you do have a numbers advantage of a plus player, but it's still very difficult. These are things that we train our team on all the time. Now, that brings us to supposed to you build up with the +1, you work to one side of the midfield in the progression zone, zone number 2, where hopefully you can have a +1. You change that to the opposite field, and hopefully when you're in the attacking third, you can have close to even number. That's an old school positional play mentality. And now we look at relationism from Fluminense, right? Where they build these staircases and they shift 9 guys to one side of the field, which is absolutely amazing. Like, this was very inspiring to me. I saw that guy, I want to say it was at, it was a Swedish club. It was I think it could be Malmo, or my friend Thomas Svensson used to play at Malmo. And they made a hybrid of that, right? And you're talking about clusters of players, staircase, they keep the ball and they staircase into the middle of the field eventually in the attacking third. But my thing is this: these are very gifted players who probably played a ton of street ball. Fluminense, these are all kind of similar types of players. I'm not sure you could go do this in the English Premier League. I don't know how well that is dependent on the characteristics of your players. But I love the idea of bending the ideas of positional play. Now, if we look at youth soccer and we want to take, I showed you those constraints, and we play, say, the U8, so they're 7 and 6-year-old kids. We play on the right here, kind of a diamond shape 4v4 game. And you see lane 1 is the right back, left back, and center mid are in the middle lanes. If you want to give them positions, it doesn't matter. And this is another game based on lanes and positioning. But it makes you question, is this the correct way to do it? Because if this was a 7-year-old at Fluminense, is it okay to create this 3 against 1 in the right side of the field? Maybe you could get it down to the end line and cross to the far side where there's nobody except the red player. Kids need to be comfortable, in my opinion, growing up, playing in very small areas and exploiting very small spaces. Because if you can exploit very small spaces, the game becomes so much easier, and your skill set is, your toolbox is so much bigger, just tactically in the way you want to play. It creates something different.